last one. So we've been talking about the breathing patterns. Essentially, is it upper lower chest? Is it nose to mouth? And then also about the biochemistry. What are CO2 levels and oxygen levels in the blood? I think the last one that's super important to cover is like muscular activity. Like breathing is a very muscular activity, even though it doesn't feel like it. And I think one of the goals is improving the function, like the respiratory muscle function. And we have two muscles. Like breathing essentially is more like an inhale focused, or it's more like on the inhale we are actually using a lot of muscles. Exhaling is more like a passive act where we can use musculature to force breathing, but for inhalation it's really important that it's like a muscular effort. I think one of the main things when we think about the biomechanics of breathing is we can be very specific, targeting single muscles up to a point. Let's say here we want to use our right pec muscle to do a little bit more of the breathing, and I can show you how we do that. But I think in essence there are three cool drills that I like. One is for the diaphragm. It's called a supine diaphragm stretch. And then there are two things where it looks a little bit like ballet dancing, but where you can also focus on breathing in different positions and getting more muscular activation in these positions. And then I'll shortly talk about you have around, I think it's around 9 to 10 muscles of inhalation that help with inhalation. And then we're going to maybe pick one or two of them and see how it feels to try to activate them and how it influences your breathing later on. So the first drill is for the diaphragm again. So what we initially did in the first session is it was more about the capacity of the diaphragm to descend. Very often the diaphragm, when it hasn't been used a lot, it's kind of like stuck in a middle position. It's not moving up and down. It's not really moving up and down. So with the diaphragm drill, the goal of the diaphragm is that it's more like an exhalation-based drill. So we have a deep inhalation where the diaphragm should descend, and then we do like a really deep exhalation. And the goal of that exhalation is that we get a lot of diaphragmatic movement upward. So the diaphragm is going up all the way, and then it's going in all the way. It's kind of like a mobilization exercise for the diaphragm. That's how we can put it. And once again, why is this important? It's really important because the diaphragm is the main muscular regulator of our breathing. So it should be able to, when it contracts and relaxes, we want to see like a good freely moving diaphragm. You can think about it this way: if you do a workout where you push something over your head, you need to extend your triceps, and your bicep needs to relax a little bit. If you think about the biceps being on tension all the time and it can't relax, it's very hard for your triceps to extend because it's kind of like inhibited by the contraction of the biceps. So for the diaphragm, it's the same. If it's not able to move properly up and down, it's kind of like putting a brake on the diaphragm. And it makes breathing unnecessarily tough as well. Because if my diaphragm is not coming up properly, I have a harder time exhaling, and I probably need to use muscular effort to drive exhalation as well, which should be more like a passive act. So the diaphragm stretch it's very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to start lying down on the ground like that. We talked a lot about pelvic position already. So make sure that you're not in an overextended position. So think about a posterior pelvic tilt, so that the pelvic floor and the rib cage they're well above each other. From this position, you can bring, depending on your flexibility, you can bring your arms up a little. If you can bring them over your head, like after I've broken my ribs, I'm kind of like limited my overhead motion at the moment, but you can bring your arms up like that. You can put them on a pillow behind you, or you can just bring them up towards here. So posterior pelvic tilt, arms go up over your head or to the side. And from this position, what you're going to do is you're going to take a deep inhale. Then you're going to open up your mouth, and then you're going to do a deep, really deep exhale. So I'm trying to open my mouth, and I'm going to force air out of it as hard as I can, like this. And when I'm forcing all the air out, in the end, I want to really relax my abs. So if you contract your abs, they will contract a little if you're trying to force all the air out, because they're pulling the rib cage down. So you get a little contraction of the abs, but in the end, I want you to focus on releasing the abdominals so that your diaphragm can really descend up or ascend upwards a lot. So I'll show this again. So I'm inhaling here. Deep inhale at the posterior pelvic tilt. Now I'm opening up my mouth. I'm doing a big exhale. And now I'm relaxing my abs. Then I go again. Inhale, exhale. Relaxing the abs. It's a very good way of teaching the diaphragm how to move all the way up. And you can make this drill a little bit harder by going into a bridge position. So when you're bridging up, I still want you to focus on not hyperextending the back, but it's squeezing the glutes. Take a deep inhalation. You're holding it, and then you're slowly exhaling. And coming down. When you're exhale, you start at the top, try to exhale all the air. Then I'm slowly trying to bring, like vertebra by vertebra, I'm trying to bring down my spine to the ground. Then in the bottom, I'm trying to relax my abs. So I'm showing one more time to you guys. So it's like I'm coming up, I'm inhaling, I'm exhaling. And then I'm relaxing my abs. And depending on where you have mobility restrictions in your diaphragm, some people will feel a little bit more at the front. So they'll feel the pull more at the front, where the diaphragm attaches on the ribs in the front, and then it goes back all the way. Then it attaches to the spine in the back, and then there is like it's like a dome-shaped thing.
What would you feel?
Sorry?
What would you feel if you have some kind of restrictions?
You'll feel like a little stretchy sensation.
Like the muscle.
And this can go your upper lumbar spine to like the middle of your T-spine, depending on where it is, so that you get a stretch more in this kind of area from here to here at the back when it's exhaling. Some people, when they have more restrictions at the front, they feel the restriction a little bit more, or the stretch a little bit more in the front, especially when they relax their abdominal muscles.
Okay.
One thing that you want to do is or what you should be doing is, when you go down after exhalations, you should really think about keeping that posterior pelvic tilt. Because if you lose that posterior pelvic tilt, and if it goes like this, you put the diaphragm in a different position mechanically, and you won't feel that stretch. So when I'm exhaling at the top, and then I'm going down to the ground again, I will really want to keep that pelvic tilt, and I don't want to come into like an anterior pelvic tilt motion. This will kind of neglect the stretchy sensation that you get when you do it wrong. So the proper spinal alignment is really, really critical in making you feel this well. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that you should feel is like this, like almost vacuum-like effect, that there's no air in the lungs and that the diaphragm is being pulled really high up. And once again, you need to relax your abs to get that feeling. You know what I mean? If I keep my abs squeezed in that position, it's very hard, because the diaphragm has a hard time relaxing all the way. If I'm like this, and I just keep the abs squeezed, it's very hard. If I'm able to relax my abs after the exhalation, you'll see there's this vacuum-like effect where the diaphragm suddenly moves all the way up. It pulls the ribs up just a little as well, but it really, you have that sensation that there's almost no air in here, and that you get like your organs suddenly have a lot of space that they can occupy. It feels actually really nice after a couple of repetitions. So that's a great drill to do to create more diaphragmatic motion. It's really awesome. So what you could do, for example, as well, if you want to focus on the diaphragmatic inhale, is use the straw when you inhale. Get the straw away. Exhale without the straw. So if you have a hard time with the diaphragm descending, you can use the straw to get a better diaphragmatic descent. Put the straw away. Exhale at the top, so that you get a really nice way of all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way up. Do this 3 sets of 5 repetitions in between sets when you warm up, or just in your warm up. It's a great way of getting better diaphragmatic function, which in turn, if you're super stressed out, better diaphragmatic function, and generally it's a great way of mobilizing the internal organs. A lot of these China martial arts, they have a lot of these drills where they move their belly muscles around to massage the internal organs. Breathing is one of the best ways to massage the internal organs. And if you have a healthy diaphragm, your liver, I think they measured the liver, it moves up to 12 centimeters up and down. It's quite a big range of motion. Imagine if your diaphragm is not moving at all, your organs don't get that massage. And that massage, all these organs are innervated by the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve goes to the brainstem, to the like medulla, the lowest part of the brainstem, and it's also really good of calming down the nervous system. That's why breathing is such a cool tool. If you do diaphragmatic breathing, it's such a cool tool to calm people down as well, is because you get a lot of that input to the brain that's saying, hey, calm down, buddy, everything is good. It's more like this rest and digest response that you get from diaphragmatic breathing. So really cool exercise. It looks kind of, I think that's the interesting part of all the breathing exercises. You don't realize how powerful they are until you really practice them and see how they affect your body. So that's number one. The second drill that I think is really nice, it's a lateral opener from one of the Sea Health courses. It's a great tool, and I think it goes back to thinking about it's a little different now. Oops. Better. So it's a lateral opener, and the goal is to get muscular activation on the. It's more one-sided. So what I talked to you before is what you oftentimes see with people is that there's a rib cage is moving fairly well, and the other one is not really moving. So if I have a side that's not moving properly, this might be, or this is very likely due to not properly activating musculature on that side. And one easy way to test this is you should be able to kind of breathe into different areas of the lung, in the lung field. That's, of course, it's not really what's happening. Like your lungs are just filling up. But you can create the muscular activity in different parts that will help facilitate the expansion of the rib cage. So when I say breathing into a certain part of your lung, this of course is bullocks, but what will happen is that the muscles that help spreading the rib cage apart are actually working hard, and you're creating more muscular activity so that you learn to use these muscles again. So the drill that we're doing is called a lateral opener. And the cool thing about this now is that it's more like unilaterally focused than the drill that we did before. So the diaphragm stretch basically is, okay, can I move my diaphragm up and down? I'm not really looking at side-to-side differences so much. What we're going through right now is I'm just showing it in this position first before I go to the wall. I'm going to cross my leg behind my body to create a little stretch on the outside of my thigh and my glute. So this is what I'm doing with my leg. Then I'm going to push my arm away. I'm trying to distract the shoulder blade. Then I'm going to bring my arm up, and then I'm leaning towards the wall. That's why I said it's a little bit like belly dancing. And now the goal is for 3 to 4 inhales, I'm going to really take a deep breath into my abdomen on that side. So I'm trying to inhale. And what I want to feel is my diaphragm really descending on that side and pushing out on the, like pushing the belly out a little. So the goal is 3 to 4 inhalations on that side. I'm trying to breathe really low. And it's out and to the side as well. And I don't know if you see my hand moving, but it's actually moving quite well now. That's number 1. Number 2 is that's descending of diaphragm. Is I want to use my intercostal muscles to get a little bit more rib expansion. So I'm placing my hand at the side. If these muscles are not working properly, slapping the ribs. A really great way of getting sensory stimulus for all the tissue over there, and it really helps increase the activity of those muscles when you inhale. So now I'm going to my ribs, the side of the ribs, and I'm trying to inhale into this area. So once again, the goal here is to feel expansion of the ribs laterally. And then the last thing is I'm going to try to get my hands up to the top. If you have a partner, he can push from the front and the back. And you try to feel an expansion of all this part here. The chest coming forward, the back coming backwards. When you do the inhalation. 3 reps as well. So what you're doing essentially is you're targeting a diaphragm on one side, you're targeting the intercostal muscles, a little bit of your pec muscles and your serratus posterior muscles, serratus anterior muscles, and then also the scalenes and the muscles that help you at the top by elevating the rib cage a little. So this is it's a very global mobilization breathing exercise, but it's a cool way of warming up. And sometimes what I do to make it a little bit more dynamically, it looks like a real ballet exercise. It's I'll do a crossover step. I reach, I inhale. I do a crossover step on the other side. I reach, I inhale. And then I just go crossover. As I'm walking, for example, I just do one length in the gym, a couple of breaths in here, a couple of breaths up here, a couple of breaths really high. And then in the end, what you should also do is like trying to go from the very bottom to the very top with every inhalation. So when I'm starting here, now we had separation here, here, here. In the end, I'm trying to go, okay, I'm breathing in here, then up here, and then all the way to the top. It's also a really nice way of like getting that global activation on one side, and not only diaphragm, ribs, and upper chest. Simple exercises, but once again, very, very cool. If you have mobility issues, like hey, you have an issue, bring your hand overhead, this might be a game changer. So a lot of these muscles here, when they are overactive or underactive, they might cause issues with shoulder function. And this may help you release the tissue, release the muscles, just by using different breathing mechanics. In the long run, for a lot of people, I've seen great reassessment just by doing these drills in regards to overhead range of motion. For example, I feel this, I broke my ribs when I was very young, like the lower ribs on this side. I can still feel, and I also broke my clavicle on that side. And if I don't do this drill regularly, I feel that I have way more restriction on that side breathing. And my overhead mobility on this side is way worse than on the other side. And by just working on the breathing, it actually helps a lot. It's not always only stretching. It's kind of like a mobilization stretch as well when you use the breathing, but it's kind of like a different way of thinking about it than just going, okay, I need to stretch my shoulder, I need to stretch my shoulder. Yeah, you should do that probably as well, but breathing oftentimes has huge or creates huge activity changes that may help you to lift overhead better. So this is the lateral opener, and the other exercise is called like a front opener. it's a little bit similar, but it creates it's a little bit more focused on the front, of course. So what I'm doing is I'm doing going kind of like in a little lunge position, but more weight is in the front leg. I'm squeezing the back leg. Then I'm going to take the arm where the leg is forward. I'm going to bring that arm up. I'm going to go into extension. So I'm trying to squeeze this glute. It's kind of like a diagonal pattern now. And then I'm trying to do the same thing. The back leg, I'm focusing on inhaling here. Then I'm moving to the other side of the rib, trying to get extension over here. And then I'm moving up to the chest, trying to get a little bit more extension over here. 3 breaths in each region. It's a great way of mobilizing the tissue. And guys, I mean, you don't need to be so religiously about that position. You can also go like, hey, I'm going into a lunge position. I can go like right leg forward. I shift forward. I reach up. Can also reach up with both hands, but this unilateral thing is quite cool. Reach up, inhale over here. Take another step, reach up. So there is a lot of ways how you can incorporate it. A little bit maybe in a more traditional gym warm-up than just doing like the static exercises. But I still think there's great benefit in doing these static exercises to learn how to engage the right musculature properly before you go too fast and too dynamically.
Yeah.
So these are very, very global strategies. What you oftentimes find when you really go deep in your assessment is that some muscles don't switch on when you're breathing on a very one-sided way. So what I mean by this is, we talked about the diaphragm already. So I might have restrictions on one side of the diaphragm. It's like a cone-shaped muscle. Maybe one side is able to contract really well, while the other one is not able to contract well. I can see that when I do that kind of assessment, I can see it with arrhythmic excursion. If one side is not extending, I might have an issue with the diaphragm on one side. So stuff that you could do to fix that is the lateral opener is a great way of fixing that. But it might be that your pecs are not working properly in regards to breathing. It might be that your Pec Major, Pec Minor, it might be that your serratus is not working properly. It might be that your scalenes are not working properly. So there's a lot of muscles, all these muscles that are involved in respiration, especially under higher intensity efforts, they might not be working to their full capacity. And one thing that you should feel is when you take a very deep inhale, these muscles should switch on because they help expand the rib cage. So I'm just going to show you an assessment for the Pec Major. So the Pec Major, actually can use my, shall we use the dummy? No, we don't use the dummy. So the Pec Major, it attaches at the ribs and it moves over towards the humeral head, to the humeral head. A cool way of assessing the function of the Pec Major is, if you want to assess the function of the muscles, what the Pec Major is doing, it's adducting your arm and it's rotating the arm inwards. What oftentimes happens with this kind of motion is that your shoulder blade starts moving as well. So I can move, if I really want to bring the arm inwards, you see that the shoulder blade is coming forward as well. Of course, you can only do an internal rotation, but most often when I adduct the arm, the shoulder blade comes forward as well. So what I want to do in this kind of situation now is, because I'm focusing on the breathing activity of the muscle, I want to do the opposite. So what I want to do is I want to fix my arm. I want to fix my shoulder blade, because what's happening now when the pec is contracting, it's not bringing the arm in and forward, but instead it's pulling the ribs out towards the arm. And this creates that expansion of the rib cage. So if this is not coming in when the pec is contracting, these muscles or this part of the chest is coming out. I hope there was well explained. So I'm putting my shoulder blade in the wall, and then I'm trying to do a deep inhale. And what you should be feeling is when you take a really deep inhale is that the pec muscle is actually contracting. And you can do that for all muscles of inhalation. So I could go, is my right pec contracting when I inhale? And yeah, I feel the right contraction. Is my left pec contracting? Okay, I feel less activation on my left than on my right. A lot of people have that. Right-handed people have a little less activation on the left side. I could go. There's a muscle called the Pec Minor muscle. So the Pec Minor, it attaches to the shoulder blade. It pulls the shoulder blade up and forward a little. So when I want to work on the breathing function of the muscle, I pull my hand a little bit closer to where the Pec Minor goes. I'm going to pull my shoulder blade back and down a little. Keep it in this position. And what I want to feel now is, because the Pec Minor is moving more in this direction, it should move the ribs upwards a little bit more when it contracts. So normally it brings the shoulder blade forward. If the shoulder blade is fixed and pulled back down, the ribs will be pulled up a little. So if I do this properly, I'll have a feeling of the ribs moving up a little. And then I can do this for all muscles very, very specifically. And oftentimes you find one side that's not very active, or you find certain muscles not being fully activated. And then it makes sense to focus on rehabbing them. But I would recommend finding somebody that is actually checking different muscle functions in breathing. It's very hard to do this on your own.
It could be a reason why people have the supraspinatus pain.
Well, once again, I think especially when you're moving, when the breathing musculature is not working properly, you create a lack of stabilization oftentimes somewhere because the muscles are not working properly. And this could cause there's so many different shoulder pathologies that it can cause, being it like the biceps, like the shoulder. Let's say, I think the most important one is the position of the shoulder joint. If the shoulder joint is not fully centered, you're almost always creating some kind of disbalance. And by having the right muscular activation, you're very more likely to have a centered joint than when you don't breathe properly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's great. These are great drills, but just practicing, I think, to keep it simple, practicing the diaphragmatic breathing, the diaphragm stretch, it's an awesome tool. Try to do it for 2 to 3 weeks and see how it affects your breathing patterns. And then including these lateral stretches, I think this is something that in general and in CrossFit, we are doing not enough. I think we have, a lot of us have a pretty good extension and flexion pattern from doing all that kipping stuff. But a lot of people in the CrossFit world or in the general population, all these side bending motions, they are very much limited. And I think the breathing component of that is huge in creating more mobility in this area as well.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. But I think those were really cool 3 episodes that we just had. Probably will be into 3 different weeks. So we can go, the next topics could be something a bit more specific. I think we've done like the basics for how to breathe and how to implement the breathing within your warm-up. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to know, okay, how should I breathe when I'm doing burpees, when I'm doing, a WOD that includes, bench press with dumbbell snatch, whatever it is. Because I guess there are a lot of misconceptions. The same thing that we have the concept of breathing, breathing when I want to get the breath in, I'm just like inflating myself, like if I was a balloon, and that's not correct. The balloon is here, the balloon is in the diaphragm, so you need to expand here. So those misconceptions, I'm pretty sure that they also exist on the way that we train and the way that we move.
Adrian, did we talk specifically about the Valtava Maneuver on the last podcast? I can't remember. Did we make it?
No, we mentioned it. I think we talk a little bit. I think we also talk about the box breathing at some point. So we talk very briefly about it, but I think it will be great to talk more precisely about that and how to implement that in different parts of, like, if somebody's doing endurance, if somebody's doing, or even saying endurance is too wide. It's not the same when you're rowing, when you're running, when you are doing a assault bike. So we could kind of implement all these things when you warm up, when you train on a moderate to low intensity, or when you want to go and do a high intensity workout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Sounds good. I think I think we could go like breathing in like very heavy weights, breathing with lighter weights or moderate weights, and then I think also breathing in regards to movement patterns.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are you going into extension? Are you going into flexion? That's what you see on a very basic level, what you see in yoga. Most often when you go into these extension positions, you're inhaling. When you go into the flex positions, you're exhaling. Same for the squats. It feels way better. If you look at the good guys, it's, hey, the bar is overhead. Maybe start inhaling or inhale. You bring the bar to your rep, you push it overhead, you inhale again. And you're not inhaling when the bar is resting on your shoulders and when you're down. Stuff like that, I think, is pretty
I think a thruster will be a really good exercise to explain, because you have the, full extension and extension on the squat. When you use the hip to go out, when you are up, should you hold the breath here? Should you inhale, exhale? And that made a huge difference on performance, because if you're holding constantly the breath in and then you let it go when you shouldn't, then you're gonna feel way more tired
in the movement.
Yeah,
I agree. It's horrible. If you breathe wrong on the thrusters, I think it's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And that I noticed that the difference is not something that you can say, okay, I'm gonna work on it. No, it's just like you are done. If you're breathing badly during 4 or 5 reps,
you
can pretty much stop. And if you breathe correctly, you can go to up to 21 reps.
I agree.
I think the thruster, at least for me, it made a huge difference. That maybe a clean or a snatch that is more like just one movement, one explosive movement, and that's it. There is not much to do.
I think it goes more back into, hey, what do you do when you do touch and go power snatches or touch and go muscle snatches, stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe lighter hang squat cleans.
The touch and go. I think the touch and go clean and jerk could be similar to the thrusters. So when are you breathing? Are you holding here? You're receiving. You're breathing in. You're breathing out, and then so maybe we can do a few. We can get a few exercises and do like a few drills of breathing in, out, in, out, in, out, or whatever is the rhythm. Also, burpees probably is a good exercise. Box jump overs, things like that. That it's a little bit more complex movement.
Let me just, we go burpee, thruster, clean and jerk.
What else could be?
Have you ever thought about breathing and keeping pull-ups?
Breathing, yeah, I think that one. I mean, I see the pull-up, the keeping pull-ups more like a cardio workout or a cardio exercise, more than a strength exercise. Obviously, you have at the end is the muscles that are collapsing at some point. But, if you're able to do 40, 50, 60 or 100 reps, like some people can do, that's more like a cardio kind of movement. So now I can't really think when I'm inhaling or exhaling, but I think at least in my case, that one, it's a little bit more I have it more interiorized, but I don't know if everybody is thinking in the same way. And I don't know if I'm doing it right, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And I think, but at least I saw a huge difference on thrusters a couple of weeks ago on changing the breathing, and suddenly I was like, oh, this feels way better. And then fuck it up because I just got confused or whatever. And then I was holding the breath when I shouldn't. I was like, oh, I fucked it up. Now I can do more.
You know what I think is super important though to understand is, and this goes back to training all techniques, is initially you'll have a step where you need to go a little slower to make sure that you're doing it right before you can speed it up again and be faster. I think this is what a lot of people, where they have a misconception, is if you can't do something properly, it takes conscious effort to change it to the better. And that means you need to go a little slower to actually make or implement the change. And then you will realize by doing it a couple of times, it makes you faster.
Yeah.
I think rowing is such an obvious thing. Is if you row crappy, it's very hard to go super fast.
Yeah.
You change the technique. This will make you slower for the next 2 to 3 or 4 sessions. But in the end, even after one session, oftentimes people see a huge improvement if they go back to proper rowing technique instead of doing their shitty row. And I think it's a little bit the same with breathing. Oftentimes when you need to think about it, it needs to be a little slower. When you have automated it, you can be way faster.
Yeah, exactly. I think you need to automate. That's probably the key word, to automate it. Once you train in a relaxed, out of a stress situation, and you internalize that into your way of doing stuff, then you can apply it.
There's this great concept that I love about the 4 natural stages of learning. It's unconscious incompetence. So you're not aware that you're doing something wrong. Then you have conscious incompetence. Now you realize, okay, actually my breathing is really bad doing the thruster. Then you have the stage of conscious competence. You're slowly going to try to do it consciously right. And then finally you'll end up with a stage of unconscious competence, which is the final stage that you should be doing stuff at. Is if you're really good at playing tennis, your goal is not to focus on how I hold the racket, how do I do this, and then you just hit the ball really well. And that's
how it's called, the 4 stages of
learning? I think it's the 4 stages of learning. I need to look up who came up with that model. I think it's a really nice model where you go from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. Yeah. And I think it really explains very much that if you're not aware of something, there's no way that you can fix it. You will be aware of it, that it's crappy. It will take time and some effort to change it to being consciously competent at it. And then if you're consciously competent, it will take another time to actually make it into a second natural rhythm that you can just execute without any thought.
Yeah, I think there is a stage in the middle from the first to the second one, which is the willingness to change it.
Oh,
I've seen a lot of athletes, normally just to not say always guys, strong guys, precisely.
I know.
They know they do things wrongly, really bad. They constantly do it bad because they have to step back and go slow. And then, so they don't want to go back, they just continue doing it bad. So I think there is one something in the middle.
But I think this is just basic learning theory that I mentioned, like 4 steps of learning. I think what you're absolutely right, and I think there's many different ways or many cool books about habit changes, and I think there is this in some of the habit learning theory or habit changing theory, they call it the pre-contemplation stage. So or the contemplation stage. It's where you actually think about, hey, do I really want to change this or not? And I think a lot of people are not there yet. It's there still in the pre-contemplation stage. My brother Max, he's smoking. Okay, he actually oftentimes quit, but before that, it took him quite a while to think even about quitting. Yeah. And I think that's the stage where you probably have a friend that gives you information on how bad smoking is. You read it. Then you're contemplating about how, should I change? Should I not? It's tough. I don't want it. It's so nice to have my cigarette in the mouth, but it's really bad for me. And I think all these habit learning stuff is really fascinating as well. I really like it. I think it's where so many people struggle.
Yeah.